like to welcome everyone here to our 4th annual Juried show with our theme being sculpture this year. We had a really nice collection of work that a lot of nice pieces entered. We have a wide variety of pieces, and we're really pleased with the turnout of everything that was entered. Our judge for the show is Bill Tortolot, and I'll leave it to you now.
Thanks for turning out. It's nice to see everyone. I had a chance to spend time with the work. It was not named, so I just spent time actually with the work without knowing who any of the artists were. I did get a title and a description of media, and you see the work first in digital form, and you try and kind of understand each piece, and then I got to come in on Wednesday and spend about an hour just interacting with the physical pieces, the real sculpture, if you will, to then determine the awards. I thought that the level of craft is quite high, that everything's executed almost seamlessly, very beautifully. Part of it's, I think, artists in the community with their own spaces, and part of it's what Fire Arts provides and has actually given to the community, which is a place to make very wonderfully finished and thought out works of art. I think that additionally the clay facility, the casting, I mean, it's just amazing that we have this resource in our community for anyone interested in creating three-dimensional form. So I was quite honored to be asked, and really enjoyed doing the jury.
Thank you, Bill.
So the way we work this out is Julie's going to read a name, and I'll tell you briefly what I thought about the piece, and that's what we'll do.
Okay. We're going to start out with honorable mention, and our first honorable mention piece that we're giving an award to is Sandy Ridge for her piece here, her two birds. And I can't read the title because I don't have my glasses.
Can you pronounce the title? Hugin and Moonin. What I really loved about this piece is the paper. You know, paper, as I'm a printmaker, so I'm quite enamored with paper, and its origin from China in about 105 AD. And so if you look at paper and the culture of making sculpture with paper, it's kind of a global phenomenon. And so I really enjoyed that this sculpture was made from a printed book, and that then the form, the armature, was kind of draped with a skin of paper. There's a great variety of technique, both in the base and even down to the labeling. I thought that the feathers and the construction of the form was just quite beautiful. I didn't really understand about the eyeball. One of the crows has an eyeball, which is quite fascinating. All I can bring to that is about a week ago I was driving into work in the morning, and I kept seeing these crows fly off the road. And I realized that they were picking up squashed frogs. You kind of see that silhouette in their beak. And so they are scavengers, and so, the eyeball makes sense to me. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next honorable mention is awarded to William Healy for his piece over here, which is down the road.
So Phil's out of town.
Yeah, Bill's out of town right now.
So what I really loved about this piece was it reminded me Richard Serra, who is a sculptor, makes very large pieces of steel now. He also did Tilted Art. Wrote a verb list in 1967, and it was composed of about 84 verbs and 24 possible contexts. For instance, to roll, to crease, to fold, to store. And this verb list then became how Sarah went after his work. It's the way he kind of made sculpture. And so as I looked at this, it seemed to be that verb list. It seemed to be that piece of metal that had been folded and rolled and creased and stepped on and hammered. I could really kind of feel the molding of the steel, the blacksmith's hammer, if you will, the kind of hot metal, and then as it cools, there seems to be this kind of embedded action or process, the process of making in this sculpture. And then having worked in a museum, I really like that you take what is largely this kind of made thing and then apply museum techniques to it. You give it a beautiful base, you get it to stand up, you kind of polish it up a little bit, and you get this great contrast then of the material and the making with then the presentation. So that's why I really like this piece.
And our last honorable mention goes to Dora Nutella for her piece Meditation, which is
This
right over
piece.
here.
I guess I really love the scale of the figure, and I saw her 50 feet tall when I first saw the images. She reminded me of the great Buddha of Kamakura, in that she is meditating, and she's also, I mean, that's kind of the scale I saw her as, almost as a companion piece to him, that they would sit side by side, and that, you know, her presence, her thoughtfulness seems to be a really nice companion scale-wise. I know that she's not large, but I always kind of just saw her large, so
Oh, all right, great. Thank you.
that's what I like about that piece.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
And a mighty fine job you're doing.
Okay, our third place award, starting with third place, goes to Robert Kuntz for his piece over here, which is Let There Be Light. And Bob's over there.
So, I used to hang out with metalsmiths, and I became really enamored with how they put things together and how they make sculpture. One of my favorite artists of all time is Julio Gonzalez, who is a Spanish sculptor, and he was trained as a metalsmith and then brought welding, oxyacetylene torch, and welding to sculpture. And he really liberated the form in that sculpture could now deny its physicality and could be extended out into space and made atectonic as opposed to just mass or carved away from a mass. And so immediately when I saw this sculpture, I thought about calligraphic line and Julio Gonzalez and how he really influenced David Smith, and how David Smith then kind of pushed that level of articulation even further. I quite love the stone that's in almost a jeweler's fashion, held within that larger sculpture. It has a bit of a medallion or a sundial or kind of some perhaps alien-coded cryptic way of expressing its understanding of light. So I like that piece a great deal.
Our second place winner is Susan Ward for her piece. I want to make sure I get the title right.
Get your kicks on Route 66.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm a printmaker. I love stamping, I love impressions. I love that license plates are mass-produced, but they're also unique, and that we get our own kind of number. So, initially I'm attracted to the graphic quality of the license plate. I love assemblage and how it's just kind of screwed and bolted and cut and pounded and formed into what it is. I like the scale a lot, and again, I kind of changed my scale and can really see kind of a hand gripping this skull as a gear shift and just kind of hitting fifth gear and opening it up. That kind of promise of speed and machine and metal, and yet there's always that other side of it going kind of wrong. Big Daddy Roth, Southern California car culture, all those things I think are here. Our love of the automobile. Julio Gonzalez, who I talked about over there, learned to weld in a Renault factory. David Smith learned to weld in the Studebaker factory. So sculpture and car culture, to me, are deeply intertwined and just part of Americana. So that's why I picked this one.
Okay, and our first place winner goes to Jackie Carlson for her piece, what's it called? Sorrel. And that is the horse up front here.
So this is, whoever did the installation of this show did a beautiful job. I mean, it's not easy installing sculpture, and I think the way that the show's laid out is just fabulous. The way it's laid out also brings me right to what caught my eye instantly in the digital images, which is this bronze casting of a horse. And so again, I'm into multiples and casting, and I'm very impressed with those techniques, although I can't do it in 3 dimension. The horse, some things, sometimes you make a choice and it's very hard to articulate why something strikes you just right to be, my decision for the best in the show. Part of it's that I live on the edge of town, so I see horses every day, and I think the caricature, the gesture, the quality of this horse struck me almost instantly. Its sense for form and being, I think, is just right on the money. So I quite like Sorrel.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone who came out for our annual Juried show. I want to mention one thing about this year's show. Previous shows, we always have a theme. Last year was the Whimsy show. We had quite a few entries for that, but I had some sculptor friends who would tell me, well, I don't do whimsy. And then the previous show before that was the Endangered Species show, and I had some sculptor friends who said, well, I don't do animals. So I decided this year we will just go with sculpture, so we can encompass anyone's vision. Next year, although of course we have pottery here, and we have a lot of potters that work at Fire Arts, and we've had a lot of guest exhibitors exhibiting their artwork, which is pottery. So next year's show is going to be called The Vessel, and so we're going to go